The immortal's hand crushes his throat. Behind him, the girl bound for 11 years begins to glow. The mansion screams. Magic explodes. The man who bought a house for $1 just declared war on something unstoppable. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. The auction hammer fell with a sound like thunder. $1. James Collier stared at the gavel, certain he'd misheard. Around him, the courthouse auction room buzzed with confused whispers. The auctioneer, a tired-looking man with reading glasses sliding down his nose, repeated himself. Sold to bidder 47 for $1. Final sale. James looked at the paddle in his hand, number 47 printed in bold black ink. He'd raised it as a joke, a stupid impulse born from 3 whiskeys and a bad week. You didn't actually buy a mansion for $1. That wasn't how the world worked. Sir, the auctioneer called, please come forward to complete the transaction. The walk to the front desk felt surreal. James handed over his identification and a single crumpled dollar bill from his wallet. The clerk typed information into an ancient computer, her acrylic nails clicking against the keys like tiny hammers. She printed forms, pointing to signature lines with a pen that had been chewed at the end. Congratulations, she said without enthusiasm. You now own the Whitmore estate. The name meant nothing to him. Whitmore Estate. It sounded like something from a Gothic novel, the kind his ex-girlfriend Catherine used to read before bed, before she left him for a dentist named Brad who owned a boat. What's the catch? James asked, pen hovering over the dotted line. There's always a catch. The clerk's eyes flicked toward the auctioneer, who was already calling the next lot. Property's been in tax default for 11 years. Previous owner died intestate. No heirs came forward. County's been trying to unload it for the last 18 months. She pushed the papers closer. It's yours if you want it, but I'd get a structural inspection before you celebrate. James signed. What else was he going to do? He'd lost his job as a software developer 2 months ago, when the startup he worked for imploded spectacularly. His apartment lease ended in 3 weeks. And sitting in a courthouse auction on a Wednesday afternoon, drinking cheap whiskey from a flask, seemed like the lowest point his 32 years had reached. At least now he had a mansion. Even if it was probably condemned, the address was written on the deed in faded typewriter ink. 17 Ashwood Lane. James plugged it into his phone's GPS and watched the blue line snake through the city, out past the suburbs. Into countryside he didn't know existed this close to downtown. The drive took 47 minutes. Trees grew thicker as civilization thinned. The road narrowed from 4 lanes to 2, then became gravel, then dirt rutted with potholes that made his old Honda rattle. He almost turned back 3 times. Then the trees opened up and there it was. The Whitmore estate sat on a hill like a crown on a giant's head. 3 stories of Victorian architecture, all pointed towers and wraparound porches and windows that caught the late afternoon sun like coins. The paint was peeling, shutters hung crooked, and the lawn had become a meadow. But the bones were magnificent. James killed the engine and sat staring. $1. He'd bought this for $1. The front steps creaked under his weight. The porch boards felt solid despite their weathered appearance. He tried the door, expecting it to be locked. It swung open with a groan that echoed through the interior. Hello. His voice sounded small in the cavernous entryway. Anyone here? Dust motes swirled in shafts of light from tall windows. A grand staircase swept upward, its banister carved with intricate flowers and vines. To his left, a parlor filled with furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts frozen mid-dance. To his right, what might have been a library, floor-to-ceiling shelves still packed with books. James stepped inside, pulling out his phone to use as a flashlight. The electricity was probably shut off. He was right. None of the switches worked, but the fading daylight revealed enough. Hardwood floors beneath the dust and debris. Crown molding that would cost a fortune to replicate. A chandelier in the entryway that, even tarnished and cobwebbed, looked like something from a palace. This is insane, he whispered. He moved deeper into the house, opening doors, climbing stairs, his footsteps echoing. 8 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a kitchen with appliances from the 1950s, a ballroom with a ceiling painted like a summer sky. Every room told a story of wealth and care that had slowly, inexorably, rotted into abandonment. On the third floor, he found the master bedroom. The door was closed, unlike the others. James hesitated, his hand on the cut glass doorknob. Something felt different about this room. A pressure in the air, a held breath quality that made his skin prickle. He turned the knob. The door opened silently, well-oiled hinges despite the house's decay. And there, sitting in a chair by the window, was a girl. James shouted, stumbling backward, his phone clattering to the floor. The girl didn't move. She sat perfectly still in a high-backed chair, hands folded in her lap, face turned toward the window where the setting sun painted everything amber and gold. She wore a white dress that seemed to glow in the dim light, her blonde hair falling in waves past her shoulders. "I'm sorry," James managed, his heart hammering. "I didn't know anyone was here. I'm the new owner. I just bought the place at auction." The girl turned her head slowly, and James saw her face for the first time. She was young, maybe 25, with features that belonged in a painting. High cheekbones, full lips, eyes the color of storm clouds. But there was something wrong with those eyes. They were distant, unfocused, looking at him, but not seeing him. "You bought the house." Her voice was soft, almost musical. "For how much?" $1, James said, feeling stupid. "I know that sounds impossible, but the auction, there was some kind of mistake, or maybe not a mistake, but..." He trailed off. The girl smiled, and it transformed her face from haunting to heartbreaking. $1. She laughed, the sound like wind chimes. "That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. After everything, after all these years, someone bought it for $1. "Are you okay?" James asked, taking a cautious step forward. "Do you live here? Have you been living here?" "I can't leave," she said simply, turning back to the window. "I've tried, many times, but I'm bound here. Bound to this room, this chair, this view of the garden where the roses used to grow." James felt cold despite the stuffy air. "Bound. Are you saying you're a ghost?" The girl laughed again, but this time it sounded sad. "I wish it were that simple. Ghosts can move on eventually, find peace, cross over. I'm something worse." She finally met his eyes directly, and the intensity of her gaze made him catch his breath. "I'm alive. My name is Lily Whitmore, and I've been sitting in this chair, in this room, for 11 years. The sun had set completely now. James sat on the floor across from Lily, his back against the wall, trying to process what she'd told him. Her story came out in fragments, pieces of a puzzle that didn't want to fit together. She'd grown up in this house, the only child of Richard and Eleanor Whitmore, old money from old families, the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. Her father had been an art collector, her mother a pianist. They died in a car accident when Lily was 23. That was 14 years ago, and after they died, something happened. Something changed in the house. Lily's voice was steady as she spoke, but her hands trembled in her lap. I started seeing things, hearing things. Doors would open and close. I'd find objects moved, photos rearranged. At first, I thought I was losing my mind from grief, but then I realized the house was trying to tell me something. "What kind of something?" James asked. His phone battery had died, leaving them in darkness broken only by moonlight through the window. Lily was silent for a long moment. "My parents didn't die in an accident. They were murdered, and whoever killed them didn't want me finding out the truth. So they did something to me, to this house. They bound me here using something old, something that shouldn't exist." James wanted to laugh, to dismiss this as the ravings of a disturbed squatter, but he'd seen her eyes, felt the wrongness in the air, and some deep instinct, the same one that had made him raise his paddle at the auction, told him she was telling the truth. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," Lily whispered. "That's the worst part. I don't know who or how or even exactly what they did. All I know is that I can't leave this room. I can't even stand up from this chair unless..." She hesitated. "Unless what?" "Unless someone who owns the house commands me to. It's part of the binding. The owner of the property has power over me. When there was no owner, when the house was in limbo, I was completely frozen. Couldn't even speak. But now that you're here, now that someone owns the house again, I can at least talk. The implications of that settled over James like a shroud. So I could just, order you around? Tell you to do things and you'd have to obey? Lily nodded, her expression carefully neutral. Yes, that's why most of me hoped no one would ever buy this place. Better to be frozen in silence than to be someone's puppet. But a small part of me, the part that still wants to live, that still remembers what freedom feels like, she looked at him with those storm-gray eyes. That part hoped someone kind would come. Someone who might help instead of hurt. James ran his hands through his dark hair, trying to think. This was insane. All of it. But he'd bought a mansion for $1 and found a girl who claimed to be magically bound to a chair. Insane was apparently his new normal. Okay, he said slowly. Let's say I believe you. Let's say all of this is real. What do you want me to do? Help me find out who killed my parents, Lily said immediately. Help me figure out how to break this binding. Help me get my life back. And in return, the house is yours. Really yours. There's money still, accounts my parents set up, investments that have been growing untouched, enough to restore this place to its former glory and more. James looked around the dark room, at the shadows and dust and decay, then back at Lily, who sat perfectly still in her chair. Hands folded, hope and fear warring in her expression. He thought about his empty apartment, his failed startup, his ex-girlfriend with the dentist and the boat. He thought about the auctioneer's bored voice. $1. Final sale. All right, James said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. I'll help you, but I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Start from the night your parents died. Lily closed her eyes, took a shaking breath, and began. It was a Thursday in October, 11 years ago. The night air had been cold, frost on the grass, the smell of wood smoke from neighbors' fireplaces. Her parents had been attending a gallery opening downtown, a collection of Renaissance paintings on loan from a museum in Florence. They'd asked Lily to come, but she'd declined. She'd been tired, fighting off a cold, wanting nothing more than to curl up with a book and hot tea. That decision haunted her. If she'd gone with them, maybe they'd still be alive, or maybe she'd be dead too. The call came at 11:47. Lily remembered the exact time because she'd been checking the clock, wondering why they weren't home yet. A police officer, voice professionally sympathetic, informing her that there'd been an accident. Black ice on the bridge. The car had gone through the guardrail into the river. They'd both drowned before rescue crews arrived. Lily had collapsed, the phone clattering from her hand, grief swallowing her whole. But even through the shock and pain, something had felt wrong. Her father was an excellent driver, cautious to the point of paranoia. He'd driven that bridge 1,000 times. And black ice in October? Before the first real freeze, the funeral was a blur. Hundreds of people, most of them strangers, business associates, art world connections, society friends who whispered behind their hands about poor Lily. So young, so alone now. After everyone left, Lily had started going through her parents' things. Not to clean out, not yet. Just to feel close to them, to remember. That's when she found the letters. They were hidden in her father's study, tucked inside a hollowed-out book. A collection of Poe stories, appropriately enough. 7 letters, handwritten on expensive paper, unsigned. The first was dated 6 months before her parents died. I know what you discovered, it read. I know what you're planning to do with the information. Don't be foolish, Richard. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. The letters grew progressively threatening. References to consequences, to dangerous knowledge, to prices paid in blood. The last one was dated 3 days before the accident. You've made your choice. God help your daughter when you're gone. Lily had taken the letters to the police. They'd listened politely, filed a report, done nothing. The case was closed. Accident due to weather conditions. No evidence of foul play. She'd hired a private investigator. He'd worked for 2 weeks before showing up at the mansion, bruised and terrified, returning her retainer and begging her to let it go. Someone had threatened him. beaten him, made it very clear that digging into the Whitmore deaths was bad for one's health. So Lily had dug herself. She'd gone through every file in her father's study, every email, every scrap of paper. She'd contacted his colleagues, visited the galleries he'd worked with, asked questions until people stopped answering her calls. And she'd found something, a pattern. Her father had been investigating a series of art thefts dating back decades. Paintings disappearing from private collections, replaced with expert forgeries. The real pieces sold on the black market, the owners none the wiser until someone authenticated them years later. He'd discovered who was behind it, a network of dealers, collectors, and museum curators. People with power, with money, with connections that reached into places Lily couldn't even begin to understand. He'd been planning to expose them, and they'd killed him for it. But here's where the story got strange. The night before, Lily planned to go public with everything she'd found, to take her evidence to the FBI, to the press. To anyone who would listen, she'd fallen asleep in this chair. She'd been exhausted, running on coffee and determination, reading through documents one more time. She'd closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, it was morning, and she couldn't move. At first, she thought it was sleep paralysis. Then hours passed, days. She could see, hear, think, but her body wouldn't obey. She couldn't stand, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but sit and watch the sun rise and set through the window. Eventually, people came looking for her. Friends, distant relatives, lawyers handling her parents' estate. They'd find her sitting in the chair. She'd scream inside her own head, begging them to help, to see that something was wrong. But her face remained calm, her body still, and when they'd ask her questions, she'd answer. But not with her own words. Someone else spoke through her mouth, a voice that sounded like hers but wasn't. That voice told people she wanted to be alone, to grieve in private. It said she was fine, just needed time, and people believed it. One by one, they stopped coming. The house fell into neglect. Bills went unpaid. Eventually, the county seized the property for tax default. And through it all, Lily sat in her chair, trapped in her own body, screaming silently. Until today. Until James bought the house for $1, and the binding shifted, loosened just enough for her to speak with her own voice again. James sat in the darkness, processing Lily's story. His logical mind wanted to reject it. Magic didn't exist. People didn't get bound to chairs by mysterious forces. But he'd seen her eyes, felt the wrongness in the air. And his hand, when he'd reached out to touch the chair's armrest, had encountered something. A resistance, like pushing through honey. An invisible barrier that made his skin crawl. "Do you still have the letters?" he asked. "The evidence your father collected?" Lily shook her head. "When I was bound, when that other voice took control, it made me burn them. Fed them into the fireplace one by one while I screamed inside. The evidence is gone. Everything my father discovered, everything I found, destroyed. So we're starting from nothing." "Not nothing," Lily said. "I still remember names, the main players in the art theft ring. And I know where my father kept backup files. He was paranoid about losing information. He had a safe deposit box at First National Bank downtown. I have the key." She nodded toward an antique dresser against the wall. Top drawer, inside a music box shaped like a carousel. James stood, wincing as his legs protested. He'd been sitting on the floor for hours. He crossed to the dresser, found the music box, opened it. A tinny version of Swan Lake played as he retrieved a small brass key taped to the bottom. "Got it," he said. "Now what?" "Now you need to make a choice." Lily's voice was quiet but steady. "You can take that key, go to the bank, claim whatever's in that box. Use the information however you want. Sell it, bury it, expose it. You own this house, which means you own me. I have to do whatever you command." She met his eyes in the moonlight. "Or you can help me, really help me. Find out who did this, break this binding, bring these people to justice. But I need to know which kind of person you are, James Collier. The kind who sees an opportunity and takes it, or the kind who does the right thing even when it's hard. James looked at the key in his hand, felt its weight. Around him, the mansion creaked and settled, old bones adjusting to new ownership. He thought about the auction, about the impossibility of buying a mansion for $1, about Lily's gray eyes and the tremor in her hands, and the fact that she'd been trapped here, alone for 11 years. He thought about the kind of person he wanted to be, the kind of person he'd been before Catherine left, before the startup failed, before he'd started carrying a flask to courthouse auctions. "I'm the kind who helps," he said finally, "even if I don't fully understand what I'm agreeing to, even if this is the craziest thing I've ever done." He pocketed the key. "So let's make a deal. I'll find out who did this to you. I'll break this binding. And in return, you teach me everything you know about this house, about your parents, about the world you come from, because I'm way out of my depth here." Lily's smile was like sunrise. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means. Just be careful. These people, whoever they are, they've already killed twice. They won't hesitate to make it 3 times. "I'll be careful," James promised. "But first, I need to do something." He stepped closer to the chair. Lily tensed. "What? You said the owner of the house has power over you, that I can command you." Her voice was wary. "Yes. Then I command you to tell me if you're lying about any of this. If this is some elaborate con, some scheme to trick me, you have to tell me the truth right now." Lily's eyes widened. Then she laughed. The sound bright and genuine. That's really smart. Okay, I, Lily Whitmore, swear that everything I've told you is the truth as I know it. I'm not trying to con you or trick you. I just want my life back." "Satisfied?" James nodded. "One more command. Stand up. I want to see if you actually can't leave the chair or if this is all an act." Lily's expression shuddered. She gripped the armrests. Her knuckles went white with effort. Slowly, shaking like a newborn foal, she rose from the chair. She got about 3 inches off the cushion before an invisible force slammed her back down. She gasped in pain. There was a sound like electricity crackling. The air around the chair shimmered with heat. Okay, I believe you." James held up his hands. "I'm sorry, I had to know." Lily was breathing hard, her face pale. "It's fine. You were smart to check. Just please don't make me do that again. It feels like being torn apart from the inside." They stood there, girl in the chair and man in the doorway, connected now by a promise and a $1 mansion and a mystery that had waited 11 years for someone to solve it. Outside, the moon rose higher. Inside, the house settled into its bones, and somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. The next morning, James woke on a dusty couch in the parlor with a stiff neck and the absolute certainty that his life had irrevocably changed. Sunlight streamed through grimy windows. For a moment, he wondered if last night had been a dream. Then he heard footsteps above, light, hesitant footsteps that shouldn't exist because Lily couldn't leave her chair. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart hammering. The master bedroom door stood open. The chair by the window sat empty. Panic seized him. Had she disappeared? Had the binding taken her somewhere else? Lily? He spun around and nearly collided with her. She stood in the hallway, her hand pressed against the wall for support, tears streaming down her face. "I can walk," she whispered, "just to the hallway, just a few steps." But James, I can walk. He understood then. The binding was weakening. His ownership, his choice to help, something had shifted. "What changed?" he asked. "You," she said simply. "When you chose to help instead of exploit. When you commanded me to tell the truth instead of commanding me to obey." The magic felt it. Bindings like mine, they feed on control, on domination. But you rejected that power. You're dissolving it just by being decent. Her smile was radiant. "A few more days and I might reach the stairs. A week and maybe I'll see the garden." James felt something warm bloom in his chest. "Then let's make sure you do. But first, we need to visit that bank. We need to see what your father left behind. Because if the people who did this are still out there, still operating, we're running out of time." Lily's expression hardened. "Then we better move fast. They're not just going to let us expose them. They'll come for us the moment they realize we're a threat. And something tells me they already know you bought this house, which means they're already coming." As if summoning disaster, the doorbell rang, a long, insistent peal that echoed through the empty mansion. James and Lily froze, eyes locked. No one knew he was here. No one should be visiting. "James," Lily whispered, "don't answer it." But James was already moving toward the stairs. He had to know, had to see who or what had found them so quickly. He descended to the foyer. Through the frosted glass of the front door, he could see a silhouette, tall, unnaturally still, waiting. He opened the door. The man on the porch wore an expensive suit that looked tailored in a different century. His hair was silver, swept back from a face that was ageless and terrible. His eyes were the color of winter ice, and when he smiled, James saw too many teeth. "Mr. Collier," the man said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "What a pleasure to finally meet the new owner of the Whitmore estate." His gaze drifted past James, up the stairs to where Lily stood frozen in the hallway. "And I see you've met our dear Lily. How delightful." He stepped forward, and James felt cold radiate from him like frost from a corpse. "My name is Victor Caney, and you and I need to have a very serious conversation about property that doesn't belong to you." James's hand tightened on the doorframe. Every instinct screamed at him to slam the door, to run, to grab Lily and find a back exit. But his feet stayed planted. Victor Caney's presence was magnetic in the worst way, like a black hole pulling everything toward destruction. "I don't know what you're talking about," James said, keeping his voice steady. "This is my house. I bought it legally." Caney's smile widened. "Oh, I'm not questioning the legality of your purchase, Mr. Collier. Though I must say, $1 seems an extraordinary bargain for such a magnificent property." He tilted his head, examining James like a specimen under glass. "Tell me, did you think to ask why it was so cheap? What was the catch, as they say?" James said nothing. Behind him, he heard Lily's soft footsteps. She was coming down the stairs despite her weakness, despite the danger. Staying to face this with him. Caney noticed too. His ice blue eyes tracked her movement. "Dear Lily, you've been so quiet these past years. I'd begun to think you'd accepted your situation. But now I hear you've been talking quite freely, telling stories, making accusations." His voice hardened. "That's unwise." She reached James's side, her hand finding his. Her fingers were cold, trembling, but her voice was steel. "You murdered my parents. You bound me to this house. And now you're afraid because someone finally believes me." Caney laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Afraid? My dear child, I'm not afraid. I'm disappointed. Your father was given so many chances to stop his investigation, to leave well enough alone, but he persisted. And persistence, while admirable, can be fatal." James stepped forward, putting himself between Caney and Lily. "You need to leave. Now." Caney didn't move. "I think not. You see, there's the matter of certain items that belong to my associates. Documents, evidence, information that your predecessor collected. We've spent 11 years ensuring that information stayed buried. We're not about to let a software developer and a bound girl undo all that work." "How did you know," James demanded, "that I bought the house, that I was here?" Caney's expression was almost pitying. "My dear boy, we've had people watching this property for over a decade. The moment the auction was finalized, I was notified. The moment you entered the house, I knew. And the moment you found Lily and decided to play hero, well," he spread his hands. "Here I am. What do you want?" A simple exchange. Lily's eyes widened. "James, no. You give me whatever documents your father left in that safe deposit box," Caney continued. "You forget everything Lily told you. You sell this property to a buyer I'll provide, at a very generous price I might add, and you walk away with your life and a substantial profit." His smile turned cold. "Everyone wins. And if I refuse, then I'll take the documents anyway. I'll bind you the way I bound Lily. And I'll make sure you both spend the next century sitting in chairs, trapped in your own bodies, screaming silently while the world forgets you exist." He leaned forward. "Do you understand the kind of magic I command? The power I wield? I've been doing this for 200 years. You're nothing. An insect. A momentary inconvenience. James felt Lily's grip tighten on his hand, felt the bond between them, fragile and new, pulsing with something he didn't understand. Fear, yes, but also defiance. "Get out of my house," James said quietly. Caney blinked, surprised. "Excuse me? I said get out. This is my property. You're trespassing. And whatever power you think you have, whatever threats you make, I'm not giving you anything." His voice grew stronger. "You've already taken too much from too many people. It ends here." For a long moment, Caney simply stared. Then his expression shifted, the veneer of civility cracking. "You have no idea what you've just done." "No," James agreed. "But I'm learning fast, and I'm not scared of you." That was a lie. He was terrified. But he'd spent 2 months unemployed, watching his life fall apart, feeling powerless and useless. He'd bought a mansion on impulse because he had nothing left to lose. And now, facing a man who'd murdered and enslaved and terrorized, James found something he'd thought lost: purpose. Caney's hand moved, faster than sight. He grabbed James by the throat, lifting him off the ground with inhuman strength. Ice spread from his fingers, burning James's skin. "You should be scared," Caney hissed. "You should be begging." James couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. His vision started to gray at the edges. Then Lily screamed, not with her voice, with something else. The house screamed with her. Windows shattered. The chandelier overhead swung violently. And the binding, 11 years of accumulated magical energy, 11 years of trapped rage and despair, exploded outward. Caney dropped James, stumbling back. "What?" The air around Lily glowed, pulsing with power. "When you bound me," she said, her voice echoing with unnatural resonance, "you made me part of this house. My pain, my anger, my will, all of it soaked into the walls. You turned me into a living anchor." She advanced on Caney, and impossibly, he retreated. "And now James owns the house, which means he owns me, which means," her eyes blazed, "he commands the power you gave me." James gasped for air, his throat bruised. He didn't understand what was happening, didn't understand the magic crackling through the air, but he understood Lily's look, the desperate hope in her eyes. "Trust me," she signed with her free hand. "Just say yes." Caney's confidence was cracking. "This isn't possible. The binding should have." "Say yes to what?" James croaked. Lily's voice was urgent. "Say you accept me as your bound protector. Say you claim the house and everything in it. Say it now." Caney lunged toward them, hands outstretched, murder in his eyes. James shouted the words, "I accept Lily Whitmore as my bound protector. I claim this house and everything in it." Light exploded. The mansion's foundation shook, and something ancient and powerful snapped into place. Caney hit an invisible wall 5 feet from them, bouncing back like he'd struck solid steel. He tried again, slamming his fists against the barrier. Nothing. Lily stood between James and Caney, and around her the air shimmered with protective magic. The binding hadn't just weakened, it had transformed. "Impossible," Caney breathed. "You can't. The binding should have." "Bindings feed on control," Lily said. "On domination. On one person enslaving another." She looked at James with something that might have been gratitude or might have been something deeper. "But James didn't try to control me. He chose to help, to protect. And magic, old magic, it knows the difference." The barrier pulsed, forcing Caney back another step. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You think you've won? You think because you've twisted one binding you're safe? I have resources you can't imagine, power you can't comprehend. I'll return with others. We'll tear this house apart stone by stone until we find what we need." "Then we'll be waiting," James said, finding his voice. He stood beside Lily, his hand in hers, facing down a man who'd killed her parents and stolen her life. "And we'll be ready." Caney stared at them for one more moment. Then he turned and walked down the porch steps, his expensive shoes clicking against old wood. At the bottom, he looked back. "1 week," he said. "You have 1 week to reconsider. After that, I bring war to your doorstep, and this time, being noble won't save you." He vanished, not walked away, not drove off. Simply ceased to exist, as if he'd never been there at all. except for the frost on the porch where he'd stood, slowly melting in the morning sun. James and Lily stood in the doorway, still holding hands, still trembling. The protective barrier around them faded, the light dimming, but James could still feel it, a connection between him and Lily and the house itself, stronger than before. "What just happened?" he finally asked. Lily's laugh was slightly hysterical. I think we just declared war on the people who killed my parents." She looked up at him. "Are you sure about this?" "Because Caney wasn't lying. They'll come back. With more people, more power, and we barely survived one of them." James thought about his empty apartment, his failed startup, his ex-girlfriend who'd left him for someone safer, more stable, more normal. He thought about the past 2 months of feeling useless and lost. Then he looked at the mansion, his mansion, that had chosen to protect them. At Lily, who'd survived 11 years of imprisonment and come out fighting. At the key in his pocket that would unlock her father's evidence. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said. "Then we have work to do," Lily said. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. "We need to get to that bank. We need to find allies, and we need to learn everything we can about the people we're fighting." She smiled, and it was fierce, because in 1 week, they're coming for us, and I plan to make them regret it. James nodded. "Then let's get started." They stepped back inside, closing the door on the melting frost and the morning sun, and the normal world that had just become very, very strange. In 7 days, Victor Caney would return with an army. But for now, James and Lily had a mansion, a mystery, and a fighting chance. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. Recovery took longer than James expected. A week passed before he could walk, without feeling like his legs might give out. 2 weeks before the bandage came off his hand, revealing a scar that looked like lightning frozen in flesh. Cross visited daily, checking the bond between James and Lily, monitoring for complications. "There are none," he said. On day 17, adjusting his glasses, "You're both stable, healthy. The magic has settled into something sustainable." He paused. "Unprecedented, actually. I've never seen a voluntary bond take hold so completely." "Because we both wanted it," Lily said. She sat in a chair by the window, but now it was by choice. She could leave any time, often did, walk in the grounds, relearning her own body. The magic responds to will. We willed this connection. "Yes," Cross agreed, "which makes you both very powerful and very vulnerable." The archivists will have noticed. They'll be studying what happened, looking for weaknesses. "Let them look," James said. He was getting better at sounding confident when he felt anything but. "We've got the reality key. We've got allies. We've got a mansion that apparently fights intruders. Plus, Margaret brought groceries and Elena set up a perimeter. We're basically a fortress." "You're a target," Cross corrected gently. "A valuable, interesting target. Victor Caney doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget." "Neither do we," Lily said quietly. "My parents are still dead. 11 years of my life are still gone. And somewhere out there, the archivists still have dozens of people bound like I was." She looked at Cross with steel in her gray eyes. "When do we go after them?" Cross sighed. "That's actually why I'm here. Elena has found something, a lead on one of Caney's other bound victims, a man in Chicago who disappeared 6 years ago. His family is still looking for him. If we can free him like we freed you, if we can prove the binding can be broken repeatedly, it changes everything." "When do we leave?" James asked. "Tomorrow," Cross said. "But James, you need to understand the risk. Every time we break a binding, we alert the archivists. Eventually, they'll stop running. They'll make a stand." "I know," James said, "but we can't just hide here. If we don't fight back, more people get bound, more families lose loved ones. Besides," he glanced at Lily, "I made a promise to help. That means all the way, not just until it gets scary." Lily smiled. Cross nodded. "Then pack light. We leave at dawn." Chicago was cold. January wind cut through James's jacket as they stood outside a warehouse in the industrial district, staring at boarded windows and graffiti-tagged walls. According to Elena's intelligence, this was where Marcus Webb had last been seen before vanishing 6 years ago. Security guard, father of 2, absolutely no connection to art theft or magical societies. Just wrong place, wrong time. He saw something he shouldn't have, Elena explained. She'd flown in separately, meeting them at a diner 2 blocks from the warehouse. Testified at a trial for an assault he witnessed. One of the defendants was archivist adjacent. Within a week, Marcus was gone, and his binding signature matches the same pattern as Lily's. So Caney grabbed him, Cross said, turned him into another trapped archive. The question is, what did Marcus see that was worth binding him for 6 years? Only one way to find out, Lily said. She'd changed in the past weeks. Harder, more focused. The softness that came from 11 years of isolation had burned away, replaced by purpose. Let's get him out. They approached the warehouse carefully. Elena had disabled the magical wards earlier, slipping past archivist surveillance through methods she declined to explain. But the building still felt wrong. The air too still. The shadows too dark. Inside, the warehouse was divided into sections. Storage on the ground floor, offices on the second level, and up the stairs, past more disabled wards, they found them. Not one bound victim. 7 people sitting in chairs arranged in a circle, perfectly still, eyes open but unseeing. Men and women of different ages, all wearing clothes from different eras. One woman's dress looked like it was from the 1920s. A man wore a military uniform from World War II. They've been here for decades, Cross whispered. Dear God, Caney's been collecting them for decades. Lily moved to the center of the circle, her expression twisted with rage and grief. This is what he wanted for me, to be one of them, stored, used, forgotten, her hands clenched into fists. We're getting them all out, all of them, James started. That's 7 binding rituals. Do we even have enough supplies? I brought enough for 3, Cross admitted. We'll have to come back for the others. No, Elena said. She pulled out a wooden case, opened it to reveal vials and herbs and components James didn't recognize. I prepared for 8, just in case. 1 for each of them, plus a spare. She looked at Cross. You taught me well, old friend. I know how to break bindings now. Cross's eyes widened. Elena, the backlash from 7 simultaneous unbindings could tear this building apart. It could kill us. It'll definitely alert every archivist within 100 miles. Probably, Elena agreed. So we better work fast. They spent 2 hours setting up 7 ritual circles, overlapping and interconnected. Cross took the lead, directing placement, checking symbols. Elena prepared the components with surgical precision. And Lily and James, they went to each bound victim, spoke to them gently, even though they couldn't respond, promising freedom was coming. James knelt before the World War II soldier. The man's eyes stared at nothing, but up close, James could see the faint signs of life. The barely perceptible rise and fall of breathing, the slight warmth of skin. You're going to be okay, James said. I know you can't hear me, but we're going to break whatever's holding you. You're going to see your family again. Assuming they're still alive, a voice said from the darkness. James spun. Victor Caney stepped from the shadows, immaculate as always, flanked by 6 operatives. His smile was sharp. You're predictable, Mr. Collier. I knew if I left breadcrumbs, you'd follow them. This was a trap. James breathed. This was a test, Caney corrected, to see if you'd really risk everything for strangers, to see if your nobility was genuine or just circumstantial. He walked closer, operatives fanning out to block the exits. Turns out, you're a true believer. How refreshing, and ultimately futile. Elena and Cross moved to defensive positions. Lily stepped in front of James, protective. The bound victims sat unmoving, unaware that their fate was being decided. You can't have them, Lily said. Any of them. We're breaking every binding in this room. Even if it kills you, Caney asked. Even then, she replied. Caney laughed. Such passion. It's almost admirable. Almost. He gestured, and his operatives attacked. They moved inhumanly fast, weapons appearing in their hands, blades that shimmered with enchantment, garrots made from silver wire. Elena met them with her own blade, the one that had tasted Cain's blood before. Cross pulled vials from his jacket. Throwing them with precision, they burst into light and flame, driving the operatives back. And Lily fought with the dagger from the mansion, the one that had broken her binding. She moved like she'd been trained for years. Muscle memory awakening? Or maybe it was the house's magic still flowing through her. James grabbed the nearest ritual component, a bowl of prepared oil, and threw it at an advancing operative. It splashed across the man's face, sizzling on contact. The operative screamed, clawing at his skin. "Blessed oil," Cross shouted. "They can't stand sanctified materials. Use everything." The warehouse became chaos, magic and blood and violence echoing through empty space. But James saw the pattern. Caney wasn't attacking, he was positioning, moving his operatives to specific points around the bound victims, creating a counter-ritual. "He's trying to strengthen the bindings," James yelled. "Make them permanent." Cross swore. "If he completes that ritual, these people will never be free." "Then we finish ours first," Elena said. She and Cross began chanting, activating the 7 circles simultaneously. The air screamed. The bound victims convulsed, their bodies jerking against invisible chains, and Caney's operatives chanted back, words in a language that hurt to hear. 2 rituals, opposing each other, reality caught in the middle. James felt the bond with Lily Flair. She felt it too, looking at him across the chaos. Without speaking, they understood. This was like the mansion. They'd won because they chose each other. Because their bond was voluntary, real. Magic responded to that. To love freely given. "I'm with you," James said. "Whatever you need." Lily nodded. "Then let's end this." They clasped hands. The bond between them ignited, channeling power neither of them knew they possessed. It flowed through Lily into the ritual circles, amplifying Cross and Elena's work. The bindings shattered, all 7 at once. The bound victims gasped, coming alive after years or decades of stillness. The World War II soldier fell forward, James catching him. The woman in the 20s dress screamed, confused and terrified. The others cried or shouted or simply breathed like it was the first time. And the backlash hit like a bomb. The warehouse shook. Walls cracked. The roof groaned. Caney's operatives were thrown backward, their counter-ritual destroyed. Caney himself staggered, shocked. "Impossible," he breathed. That bond, how did you?" "Love," Lily said simply. "You wouldn't understand. You've spent centuries taking, binding, controlling. You've forgotten what it means to give, to choose someone else over yourself." She advanced on him, dagger raised. "And that's why you'll lose." Caney retreated. For the first time, James saw real fear in his eyes. "This isn't over," Caney said. "The archivists, you think this is just about me, but there are others, older, more powerful. They won't let you destroy what we've built." "Then they can get in line," Elena said, her blade at his throat. Behind Caney, his operatives were either unconscious or fleeing. The bound victims were free, confused but alive, and Cross was already calling contacts, arranging transport, medical care, family notifications. "You lost," Lily said to Caney. "Accept it." Victor Caney smiled. "And it was terrible." "No," he said softly. "I'm just getting started." He moved faster than sight, knocking Elena aside, grabbing Lily. She screamed as his hand closed on her throat. The dagger clattered from her grip. "James," she gasped. "The bond. Use it." James didn't think. He grabbed the dagger from the floor, felt the bond between him and Lily like a rope connecting them, and he pulled. Magic surged. The bond materialized, visible, golden threads linking his heart to hers. And those threads wrapped around Caney's arm like a noose. Caney screamed. The threads burned him, purified magic rejecting his centuries of corruption. He released Lily, stumbling back, his arm smoking. What is that?" he gasped. "Choice," James said. "Love, the things you've forgotten. And they're stronger than anything you've stolen." He advanced, the dagger steady in his hand. "Now get out, or I'll do to you what you've done to so many others. I'll bind you, trap you, make you sit in one place for centuries. See how you like it." Caney fled, truly fled this time. No threats, no promises of revenge, just ran like the coward he was. The warehouse fell silent except for the confused voices of the freed victims. James dropped the dagger, exhausted. Lily collapsed into his arms, and he held her, both of them shaken. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it. 7 people free," James said. 7 lives returned. "Yeah, I'd say we did pretty damn well." Cross appeared beside them, helping them to their feet. "Come on, we need to leave before local authorities arrive." Elena's already wiping security footage. "But we can't be here when questions start." They gathered the freed victims, explained quickly that they were safe, that help was coming. The World War II soldier, his name was Thomas, gripped James's hand with surprising strength. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rough from decades of disuse. "I thought I'd die in that chair." "You didn't," James said. "You're free, now let's get you home." The trip back to the mansion took 3 days. They had to debrief the freed victims carefully, make sure they understood what had happened without overwhelming them. Contact families, arrange reunions, deal with the logistics of people who'd been missing for years, suddenly reappearing. Thomas's wife had died 5 years ago, but his daughter was still alive, 73 years old, but alive. When they reunited at a neutral location, an apartment Elena maintained in the city, both of them cried for an hour straight. The woman in the 20s dress, her name was Catherine, had no family left. Everyone she'd known was dead, but Elena found her a place, resources, therapy, a chance to build a new life in a world she didn't recognize. The others, 5 more stories of loss and recovery, each one breaking James's heart and rebuilding it stronger. By the time they returned to the mansion, James felt like he'd aged a decade. But when he saw the Victorian house on its hill, lights burning in the windows, he felt something else. Home. This impossible place had become home. Margaret met them at the door with food and coffee and news. "The archivists have been quiet," she said. "No attacks, no surveillance we can detect. It's making me nervous." "They're regrouping," Elena said. "We've freed 8 people total now. That's 8 sources of information they lost, 8 examples that bindings can be broken. They're trying to figure out how we're doing it, and then they'll come for us," Lily said, "with everything they have." "Probably," Cross agreed, "but we'll be ready." He pulled out a folder, thick with documents. "I've been researching. The reality key James found, it's more powerful than we thought. With the right ritual, we could use it to access the archivist archive, find the locations of every bound victim, every stolen artifact, every secret they're hiding." "All at once," James said slowly. "We could free everyone." "Yes," Cross's expression was grave. "But using the key requires a massive amount of power, more than any one person can provide. It would take," he hesitated, "it would take a coven. A group of bonded individuals, all working together." "How many?" Lily asked. "At least 12, preferably more. We have 8 freed victims," James counted, "plus us 4. That's 12 exactly. If we can convince them to help, if they're willing to bond like Lily and I did." "That's asking a lot," Margaret said. "These people just got their freedom back. Asking them to risk it again, to bond themselves to others, to fight. It's too much." "Unless we explain what's at stake," Lily interrupted. "Unless we tell them about all the others still trapped, all the families still searching." She looked around at them. "We can't do this alone, but together, maybe we can end the archivists for good." They called a meeting, all 8 freed victims, plus Elena, Cross, Margaret, James, and Lily. 12 people in the mansion's dining room, sitting around a table that had once hosted Victorian dinner parties. James stood at the head. He'd never been good at speeches, but he tried. "You all know what was done to you," he began. "You know what it's like to be trapped, helpless, stolen from your lives." The freed victims nodded. Thomas sat with his hands folded, his daughter's photo in his pocket. Catherine wore modern clothes but still looked lost in this century. The others, each bearing their own scars. "We have a chance to free everyone like you," James continued. "To end the archivists, to destroy their archive, to make sure no one else gets bound. But it requires us to work together, to create bonds like the one Lily and I share. Voluntary connections that will let us channel enough power to use the reality key." He paused. "I know what I'm asking. You just got your freedom back. The last thing you want is another connection, another binding. But this would be different. You'd choose it. You could break it whenever you wanted, and it might be the only way to stop this from happening to others. Silence filled the room. Then Thomas stood. "I'll do it," he said. "My wife is gone. Most of my friends are dead. But I remember what it felt like to hope someone would save me. If I can be that someone for others, I'm in." Catherine raised her hand. "Me too. I've got no family, no connections to this time, but maybe I can build new ones. If we're bonded, we're family, right?" One by one, the others agreed. All 8 freed victims, plus Elena, Cross, and Margaret. 15 people total, more than enough. "We do this together," Lily said, "and when it's over, we stay together if we choose. Bonds of choice, not chains. Bonds that make us stronger." They spent a week preparing. Cross designed the ritual, a variation of what he'd used to bond James and Lily, but scaled up, more complex. Elena gathered components, some so rare they cost a fortune. Margaret handled logistics, turned the ballroom into a ritual space again, this time with 15 circles arranged like clock positions around a central point. And James and Lily trained the others, taught them how to feel the bond, how to channel power through it, how to stay connected without losing themselves. "It's like learning a new language," Lily explained. "At first it feels foreign, intrusive, but then you realize it's just another way of communicating, another way of being human." The night of the ritual, they gathered in the ballroom. 15 people, each standing in their circle. In the center, on a pedestal, rested the reality key. It pulsed with otherworldly light. Cross stood outside the circles, directing. "When I begin the chant, you'll feel the connection forming. Don't fight it. Let it happen. Let yourself open to the others. It will be intense, possibly painful. But remember why you're here. Remember who you're fighting for." "Ready?" James called. 15 voices answered. "Ready?" Cross began to chant. The language was different this time, newer, a blend of ancient Sumerian and something else, something that sounded almost like music. The circles glowed, and James felt it. The bond with Lily, familiar and warm, suddenly expanding, reaching out to Thomas on his left, to Catherine on his right, to all of them. 15 consciousnesses touching, sharing, becoming something more than individual. It was overwhelming. He felt Thomas's grief for his lost wife, Catherine's confusion at the modern world, Elena's iron determination, Margaret's fierce protectiveness, Lily's blazing hope. All of them, their emotions, their memories, their selves flowing together. For a moment, James panicked. This was too much. He was losing himself in the collective, drowning in other minds. Then Lily's voice, calm and clear. "You're still you. We're still us. But we're also more. Hold on to that." James focused, found his center, reached back through the bond, sharing his own strength, and slowly the 15 minds synchronized, not merging, not losing identity, but harmonizing, like an orchestra finding its rhythm. The reality key blazed. It rose from the pedestal, floating in the air, and it opened, not a physical door, a tier in reality itself. Through it, James saw the Archivist Archive, a space that didn't exist in normal dimensions, vast beyond measure, shelves stretching into infinity, packed with stolen knowledge, stolen lives, stolen futures, and among them, dozens of bound victims, hundreds maybe, people sitting in chairs, trapped in paintings, sealed in mirrors, all of them waiting, all of them hoping. "We see them," Cross shouted. "Now reach through, free them." Easier said than done. The archive resisted, wards and defenses activating. The archivists knew they were there. James felt malevolent attention turning toward them, ancient and vast. But 15 bonded minds were strong. They pushed back. Lily led the assault, her fury giving them direction. Thomas provided stability, his soldiers discipline, keeping them organized. Catherine offered creativity, finding weaknesses in the wards. And James was the anchor, the one who'd started all this with a $1 bid and a stubborn refusal to give up. He held them together. The bindings began to break, one by one, then in clusters. Victims in the archive woke, confused and free. The archive itself started to collapse, wards failing, shelves toppling, stolen artifacts spilling into the void, and the archivists screamed. James felt them trying to close the key to seal the door, but it was too late. The truth was out. The archive was falling, and 15 people, bonded by choice and powered by righteous anger, were bringing it all down. Then Victor Caney appeared, not physically. His consciousness, projected into the archive, massive and terrible. He tried to stop them, tried to rebuild the bindings, to seal the victims back into their prisons. But he was one mind against 15, one will against a collective. He couldn't hold. "You'll pay for this," his voice echoed through the bond. "The archivists will hunt you forever." "Then we'll be ready," James said. "All of us. Together." The reality key pulsed one final time. The archive shattered completely. Victims freed, knowledge scattered, the archivist's power broken, and the door closed. The ballroom fell silent. 15 people stood in their circles, gasping, exhausted, exhilarated. "We did it," Catherine breathed. "We actually did it." Cross was already making calls, coordinating with contacts worldwide. The freed victims from the archive would need help, support, medical care. But they were free. Elena smiled, sharp and satisfied. The archivists just lost centuries of work. They'll be scrambling for years to recover, if they ever do. "And us?" Margaret asked. "What happens to us now?" "We stay bonded," Lily said, looking around at the others. "If you want, we've built something here, something good. A family of choice, a coven of free people who fight for others' freedom." She looked at James. "I'd like to keep this, all of it." James felt the bonds, 15 threads connecting him to 14 amazing people, felt their agreement, their hope, their determination. "Yeah," he said. "Me too." They disbanded the circles but kept the bonds. 15 people connected by magic and choice and shared purpose. Over the following weeks they established a base at the mansion, turned it into a real home, with bedrooms for everyone, a command center, a training facility. Victims freed from the archive came to them, seeking help, healing, community. The mansion that James bought for $1 became a sanctuary, a place where the bound could become free, where the lost could find family, where people who'd been stolen could reclaim their lives. Months passed. The archivists tried to retaliate twice. Both times they were repelled. 15 bonded defenders were formidable, and with each victory, more freed victims joined them. The coven grew. James and Lily's bond deepened. Friendship became something more. Love maybe, though they were in no rush to define it. They had time now. They had freedom. One evening, 6 months after the archive fell, they stood on the mansion's porch watching the sunset. 15 people plus 20 freed victims who'd chosen to stay, plus Margaret, who'd appointed herself house mother and ruled with an iron but loving hand. "This is crazy," James said. "All of this. Started with a $1 auction." "Started with you being a good person," Lily corrected. She leaned against him, the bond humming warm between them. "You could have walked away, could have left me trapped. Instead, you gave everything." "We gave everything," James said. "All of us. And we got more back." They stood in comfortable silence until Thomas called from inside. Dinner was ready. Margaret had cooked for 30, and everyone was expected at the table. Family dinner, a tradition. As they turned to go inside, Lily paused. "Thank you," she said, "for buying a mansion for $1, for finding me, for being exactly the kind of person I needed." "Thank you for trusting me," James replied, "for teaching me that some impossible things are worth believing in." They joined the others. 30 people around a table meant for 12, laughing and talking and planning tomorrow's training. A family born from magic and choice, and a stubborn refusal to let evil win. Outside, the mansion stood on its hill, no longer abandoned or neglected, alive again, purposeful, home to people who'd found freedom together. $1 had bought it, but love, choice, and sacrifice had made it priceless. And in the master bedroom on the 3rd floor, the chair where Lily had been bound for 11 years sat empty. A reminder of what they'd overcome. A promise to never let it happen again. The end. 6 months became a year. The mansion transformed from a decaying relic into something alive and purposeful. Margaret oversaw renovations, turning empty rooms into living spaces for the growing community. Elena established a library in what had once been the ballroom, filling shelves with books on magic, history, and the occult arts that the archivists had tried to suppress. Cross set up a research center in the East Wing, documenting every freed victim's story, building a comprehensive record of the archivist's crimes. And James and Lily, they became the heart of it all. Their bond, that magical connection forged in desperation and choice, deepened into something neither of them had words for. Not quite romantic, not quite familial, but profound in ways that defied categorization. They could sense each other's emotions, sometimes finish each other's thoughts, move in perfect synchronization during training sessions. One evening, as winter approached again, they stood together on the Widow's Walk at the mansion's highest point. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Below, their found family moved through the grounds. Thomas teaching a newly freed victim how to garden, his weathered hands gentle with the seedlings. Catherine laughing with Margaret over dinner preparations. The two of them an unlikely friendship that somehow worked perfectly. Elena and Cross in deep conversation about a new lead. Their heads bent over ancient texts. This is what they were afraid of, Lily said quietly. Not just that we'd free their victims, but that we'd build something better. Something that proves their way. All that control and domination, it's unnecessary. She leaned against James, comfortable in his presence. We're proof that power shared is stronger than power hoarded. James wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Your father would be proud. You've done more than just avenge him. You've created exactly what he was fighting for. A world where knowledge is protected but shared. Where people help each other instead of exploiting each other. Lily was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret it? That day you raised your paddle at the auction? Buying a mansion for $1 and getting all this? James laughed. I lost my job, my apartment, my ordinary life. I've been attacked by immortal enforcers, learned magic is real, and apparently declared war on a centuries-old conspiracy. He pulled her closer. Best dollar I ever spent. Movement below caught their attention. A car was approaching up the long driveway. Not one of their vehicles. James tensed, ready for another attack. But Lily touched his arm. Wait. Look. The car stopped, and a woman emerged. Middle-aged, carrying a small suitcase, looking around with the wary hope of someone who'd traveled a long distance on faith alone. Elena met her at the door, and even from this distance, James could see the conversation. The woman gesturing frantically, Elena nodding, then embracing her. Another one, Lily whispered. Someone who heard about us. Someone who needs help. They watched as Elena led the woman inside, toward safety, toward healing, toward freedom. The Widow's Walk beneath their feet hummed with protective energy, the mansion itself aware and welcoming. How many more do you think there are? James asked. Bound victims waiting to be freed, Lily considered. Dozens at least, maybe hundreds. The archivists have been operating for centuries, she straightened, determination in her gray eyes. Which means we have work to do. A lot of work. Years of work, probably. James smiled. Good thing I don't have anywhere else to be. They descended from the Widow's Walk together, hand in hand, as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Below, the mansion blazed with light and life. Laughter echoed from the dining room. Music played somewhere. Someone had brought a guitar. The smell of Margaret's cooking wafted through the halls. Home, James thought. This impossible, magical, chaotic place had become home. And tomorrow, they'd save someone else, help someone else, build this community of the freed and the fighters a little bit stronger. But tonight, they'd celebrate what they had. 37 people, all of them bound by choice rather than magic. All of them proof that sometimes the best families were the ones you chose. $1 had bought a mansion, but kindness, courage, and the stubborn refusal to let evil win, those had built an empire of hope. And in a world of shadows and secrets, hope was the most powerful magic of all.